I think we're finally at the stage where we can get ready. We can start preparing for the War Within expansion. Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, the best show that happens to be named Warcraft Weekly. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more coverage, and catch me live in the mornings on Twitch. So let's lay down some facts about what I'm talking about here. From data mining and beta information, we've learned that from July 30th until the expansion's launch, we're going to farm up the Radiant Echoes event. It's where we can zip around Azeroth experiencing remnants of previous events for catch-up gear and transmog and cosmetics that can be traded across our characters thanks to the warband system, which will be in place by then. The splash screen is dated for the 30th, which means naturally we're going to see this screen before the 30th, so that's going to be like the week of the 23rd, or maybe sooner, but probably not sooner, because before this, the MDI Great Push will happen during July, with the finals happening July 21st. So the patch can't come out sooner than that, unless Blizzard has participants on like a separate WoW client just for the tournament, and that's both plausible and a reasonable thing that could happen. And we did learn just the other day, guild transfer services will no longer be a thing after July 22nd. It's just another thing that points to July 23rd and later being a very different landscape than July 22nd and earlier. In fairness, there has not been an official announcement yet. I think we can be pretty confident though that the pre-patch will drop in just about a month. Assuming this is true, we know just about everything that's going to happen until, September pretty much. We can plan, we can jump back into the game and start preparing, or we can dip out, take a break, we can play some games like the Elder Souls, whatever. But here's what I'm going to do. Starting this coming Tuesday, I'm going to start what I call the Great Farm, where I run into all sorts of, legacy to like old dungeons and raids to defeat all the bosses, but not loot anything, so that all my gear gets shot over to my mailbox and it'll sit there for up to 30 days. After 4 weeks or 28 days when the patch might come out, I'm going to open up my mailbox and unleash the transmog, unlocking all of these armor and weapon appearances, even though I'm just farming all this stuff from my Zoomy Paladin. It's a crazy plan. I'm only 99% sure that it's going to work, and I'm going to give like a 2-day cushion just in case realms happen to explode or if there happens to be any problems. This is on top of the remix here and there. I'm gonna do some awaken clears with the guild, and I did say I was gonna start pushing Keystone Master, and I haven't started yet, but I'm gonna get there, I think. And also, I haven't even gotten around to finishing like the Mage Tower on other classes if I wanted to do it this expansion, and maybe farm up some Shadowlands currencies to buy more transmog. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of WoW stuff to do in the next 2 months if we decide to, and I'll try to organize these things in the upcoming Monday video, just some ongoing reminders. But as for today the Midsummer Fire Festival is underway, featuring a new holiday armor set for our Wilder Drake mount. It's the best of the dragon riding mounts, by the way. Getting this thing's gonna sound familiar. You gotta defeat a Hoon each day for a goodie bag, and the manuscript might be inside. But what's under the game hood is yet another twist on holiday loot drops, and this might horrify you. They're actually doing something that I suggested a while back. So here's how this thing works. Each day, your first defeat of a Hoon on your Battle.net account will have a chance for the appearance to drop. The drop rate is said to be higher than usual, whatever that means, and on top of that, if it doesn't drop, bad luck protection kicks in. So the next day, the chance goes up. Here's the twist though. You only get one chance per day. After that first kill, the drop rate for your alts is 0, nada. It's not like a reduced rate like in previous updates, it's 0. So I want to make this clear. For the mount appearance, the tactic of running a whole bunch of alts, it's dead. One chance each day. You get a higher chance over the course of multiple days, and that's it. As of this recording, we don't know if that bad luck protection rolls over to future events, as in, next year's Midsummer event. I hope it does, but we'll just have to wait and see. This change has been something I've been warning people about ever since Blizzard started doing this thing with the first attempt per account stuff, as well as account-wide weeklies like Time Rifts, because, they see what we have lots and lots of alts. I want to hear your takes about this loot change, but most of the reactions that I'm seeing so far are leaning positive. During these holidays, people spend all day running one alt after another like they're dropping coins into a slot machine, sinking time into a super repetitive activity, all for them monthly active user counts. But with this, Blizzard is trying to protect players from themselves, for better or worse. One try per day. Everyone is going to have the same opportunity and can spend the rest of their day doing whatever the heck they want. The approach isn't likely to stop here either, thanks to warbands. In the future, we'll get one-time account-wide reputation rewards from quests, and all who happen to take up the same quest will get currency to buy stuff from renown vendors. In this case, the account friendliness, I guess, feels pretty fair. Alts don't need to do the rep grind, but they do at least need to work towards purchasing the player power locked behind it. When it comes to holidays though, as in cosmetics, these once per account chances could be the future to prevent alt armies from having an unfair advantage, and they might, take that even further. So I'd love to see what you think about that. Should high level gameplay dictate all other gameplay? Now, quick reminder, I don't play at too high of a level. I do like AOTC, I do KSM, that's my sweet spot, and it's the cornerstone of most of my commentary, but I do think that this is an important topic that everyone can get involved in. So let's set this question up. Wowhead did an interview with game director Ian Hazzikostas and fellow henchman Morgan Day to talk about mostly high-level gameplay, touching on topics like private auras, Mythic Plus, raid buffs, and some other stuff. The Wowhead team posted the word-for-word transcript on their website, and it might bore you to death to try and read through it, but I do respect that they didn't give a short version that people would react to without reading the team's very wordy, kind of walking on eggshells sort of responses. What I want to do here is put a spotlight on a topic that they called defensive creep. In the world of Warcraft, mobs punch us in the face and they throw fireballs and, we take damage. Sometimes we take extra damage because the boss is going to pull like some big move or we accidentally stood in fire. So we pop a defensive or a heal as a reaction. Sometimes we proactively pop a defensive in anticipation of what's coming because our raid lead or our add-on told us to. The highest levels of gameplay, at least with dungeons, is to mathematically map out the biggest pulls a group can make and then employ the use of area crowd control and defensives, making the most out of what your class and spec has to offer. And hey, you know what? That's gaming. So far, all that makes perfect sense to me. The criticism comes from defensive toolkits being almost too good to where a healer might barely be required as long as everyone's, being good. They're dodging where they can, they're using their defensives and their crowd control and their self-healing effectively. But also missing a defensive becomes fatal at very high key levels. Some high-level players are suggesting that Blizzard ease up on this defensive creep by pruning abilities and adjusting the game so that we're not as dependent on timing all of these cooldowns together or having so many cooldowns at lower levels that healers aren't even needed. It's kind of a fair take that does acknowledge participation. It'd be weird if it was mainstream that up to certain key levels, people didn't want healers at all. But something that I think these takes are missing is the argument that not everyone's good at the game. Defensives aren't only designed for mathematical precision, like using it on, big pull number 1 at 2 minutes and then big pull number 4 at 7 3/4 minutes or whatever. They're there for the flexibility of players not just doing keys, but raids and delves and outdoor content too, and anything can happen at, other player levels. So I come back to the question, should high-level gameplay dictate all other gameplay, and more specifically, is gameplay with a virtually infinite scaling difficulty healthy for the World of Warcraft? I want to say yes because, it's kind of cool having that mountaintop to climb. It's interesting to observe how top players pull off these amazing clear times and these massive pulls. But how do we balance classes and specs for an audience of, I guess, a couple hundred people, or, maybe at the highest levels, only a few dozen people? I'm not suggesting that we have a hard cap for Mythic Plus. That's actually not going to solve anything because all it would do is it would just shift the conversation from balancing for these ridiculously high level keys to balancing for, the highest level key, but getting it at the best time, because that's what's left after Mythic Gear and Keystone Hero. It's the high score, and I guess the seasonal title that comes with it. There's a lot of discussion to come from that interview, and if you're interested, a link to it is in the video description once again. Are the factions going to dissolve? That's what a lot of lore heads have been discussing back and forth over on the spoiler side of War Within conversations. I won't technically spoil here, but I'll paraphrase a few quotes that are said with an air of commentary, and they don't suggest some imminent change or a conflict. At one point in the max level campaign, one NPC referred to how there should be no horde or no alliance in the face of the big bad that we're going to fight. This quote was later changed to still carry the weight of like, hey, you know, we're all in this together no matter where we came from, yeah. But early on, critics got pretty tilted over the original quote, you know, the notion that anyone would stop acknowledging the two main factions of the franchise. And yet at the same time, the player faction, you know, the champions of Azeroth, isn't us, have usually been in this liminal state, taken aside, you know, horde or alliance when needed, but otherwise defaulting as a champion of the people when the factions went about their squabbles. Another quote refers to the peace between factions as currently being tenuous, as in any one event might be able to set things off. It's kind of funny because we could also read it at face value, but we could also wonder if the speaker is just gaslighting us into thinking that there's rough waters and this person is just trying to actually start a fight. Since we're in the realm of unreleased content, we can't be certain of what has made relations between the Horde and Alliance maybe get rocky. We haven't experienced enough of any of that faction activity in games since, the events of Shadowlands and Dragonflight. So I'd like to know what you think, if there ought to be another conflict between the factions over, I don't know, or if this cycle ought to finally come to an end. So now here's a, here's a personal take, yeah? This whole wheel thing, this whole cycle of whatever, it's pretty old. World of Warcraft's politics began with this uneasy peace, and then there was like a spark that lit up a few skirmishes here and there. There was a constant rivalry, but then, there was a big war, and that didn't even need to start anyway because some Earth and Death Knight started it. The faction war, at least to me, it doesn't feel cool anymore. Maybe it hasn't felt cool in a while after knowing that no side is allowed to win without pissing off us, the audience. It's a lot of people. So there are no real stakes in the faction conflict the way I see it. So the closest that we got to that was like Teldrassil, and overall that did not turn out so great. People were pretty pissed. And yet many players are in this kind of augmented reality version of the faction conflict because the WoW team made the game this way. Longtime players like me are just born into it. It's a conundrum of their own making, and now they're trying to fix the gameplay side of things with this whole cross-realm, cross-faction stuff, while trying to bring back this sense of identity and pride, and I don't envy them. So folks out there, maybe you, viewer, want that pride or conflict to come back in a cool way so it feels good to be your particular faction, but I'm not too keen on so much of that faction identity to being the antagonist of the other faction. We've got to grow beyond just that. At the same time, I'm also kind of juvenile, and I do want to see the Horde beat the drums of war and assemble this massive army across the sea and march down the field. It's a feeling that I haven't had since doing like Warfronts. What the factions need, I think, is an enemy, another enemy that they can really go toe-to-toe with, sort of like the Wrathgate. It's hard to contest that watching the two factions fight side by side against the undead. It felt like a pretty badass moment. What sucks is that when it's time to really take on the big bad, the Horde and Alliance, they all take a step back and let the champions shine along with some third-party faction. In 2 months, we're going to begin Chapter 1 of the World Soul Saga. We're going to meet new characters, and old ones are going to, maybe retire or die. We're going to see developments. Maybe we'll see a few minor conflicts or fears that the unity of the factions is cracking, but I'm not counting on there being any big, Horde versus Alliance war while fighting for the planet's survival at the same time. In fact, and now we're in total headcanon territory, I'm willing to bet that by the time we're through, everyone's going to be gassed from all the fighting and they won't really have the strength to fight each other again. It could be, and again, I'm making all this up, it could be that the point where the Arathi Empire swoops in, seeking to lay claim and expand their empire from across the sea. Huge developments can happen where the races of the Horde and Alliance, they drop whatever rivalry was left in the face of a conflict that they simply just can't handle alone. Now that'd be kind of That'd be kind of cool, maybe. An invading enemy that is indigenous to Azeroth, conquerors and expansionists, but not necessarily evil, just antagonists, where their premise might be to, I don't know, bring stability to a very troubled side of the world for the Emperor of Light or whatever it is. It could be that the factions as we know them are shattered. Big, massive developments that, gameplay-wise, don't actually affect our warbands or our cross-faction, cross-from guilds. And the champions do need to save the day, but I guess it comes down to, will the factions dissolve? Really, who's to say? Although, will our player characters still be strongly attached to our home factions? My opinion, they haven't been like that for a while, but I'd love to get your thoughts, and that's the show. I want to thank our families over on Twitch and Patreon for their continued support, and to you, the Algorithm Squad, thanks a lot. You made it to the end, and I very, very much appreciate it. So like the video if you enjoyed yourself, subscribe for more coverage, and catch me live in the mornings on Twitch. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.